Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. In this video I'm going to show you how you can improvise over a jazz standard only using pentatonic scales. So I'm going to demonstrate this on the first part of Autumn Leaves because that's a progression that you're probably already familiar with. It also contains a lot of the chords that you're going to come across if you start improvising over jazz songs. In this video I'm going to cover which pentatonic scales you need if you want to improvise over a major 2-5-1 and also over a minor 2-5-1 cadence. I'm going to go over two different pentatonic scales that work really well with altered dominants. And of course I'm going to cover all the chords that are in Autumn Leaves. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you make lines if you want to improvise with pentatonic scales, because it's different from how we normally work with arpeggios and scales. And I'm also going to give you some patterns because they're really useful if you want to start working with this in your playing. Let's first check out how a solo only using pentatonic scales sound. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. Let's first have a look at which pentatonic scales go with the different chords. So the first chord is a C minor 7 chord. And the obvious choice for a pentatonic scale here is just the C minor pentatonic scale. So that would be this scale. And of course, this is just a C minor 7 arpeggio with an added 11, and that fits the chord perfectly. For the next chord I'm playing an F7 altered, and this is a little bit more tricky in terms of finding a pentatonic scale. But if you think of the F7 altered, you can also play the tritone substitute, so you will play a B7 like this. And of course B major pentatonic fits with this dominant chord, so that would be this. And that works. That's what I'm using on the F7 altered, so B major pentatonic. I tend to think of my pentatonic scales mostly as minor pentatonic scales because that's just how I learned them originally. I didn't really learn major pentatonic in the beginning. So instead of thinking B major, I think the minor pentatonic from the flat 3 of the sharp 9 of the dominant, so from the A flat. So that means that I'm thinking about this as an A flat minor pentatonic scale. Of course, you should just think about it any way that you're used to handling pentatonic scales and whatever works for you. For the B flat major 7 chord, so if we look at this chord, then the top part of it is a D minor triad. So that's why I'm using D minor pentatonic over this one, so that's this scale. And that's a really great choice because it gives us really just the basic, it doesn't give us the root, but it does give us sort of the basic notes of the chord. So we have the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th, and then we have a 13 and a 9th. So we have all the sort of easy extensions to use, and we also have the basic chord in there. This means that we now have a set of pentatonic scales that we can use over a major 2-5-1. So for the C minor 7 we're using just the pentatonic scale from the root. From the altered dominant we're using it from the flat 3, and for the 1 chord we're using the minor pentatonic scale from the 3rd of the chord. Often when I'm talking about which pentatonic scale to use over a major 7 chord, then I get the YouTube comment that you should use the one from the 7th, and that's of course true. So in this case that would be, for the B flat major 7 you would use an A minor pentatonic, and you can use that. It is sort of a Lydian sound, so I think that if you want to use a Lydian sound on a major 7 chord, especially if it's a tonic chord, like in this case we really have a 2-5-1 to this B flat, then you do need to kind of make that as a conscious choice, and it's a sound that you really want to use on purpose. You don't just want to throw it in there as a standard rule. Very often the 2-5-1 is also then turned into sort of a half step moving up through pentatonic scales, so you get like G minor on the C7, A flat minor on the F7 altered, and then A minor on the B flat major 7. And of course that works really well, but you also again want to watch out that you don't end up playing lines, because that I hear that kind of often. That's like, that's a little bit too predictable and it gets kind of boring to listen to. It will work once, but maybe it's not the best strategy for making some really nice solo lines. The next chord in the song is an E flat major 7, and it's a major 7 chord, so we can just use the pentatonic scale from the 3rd of the chord, so that's a G minor pentatonic. After this we go into the minor 2-5-1, and here I'm using another type of pentatonic scales because for the A half diminished, for the D7 altered and for the G minor 6, then we have for all these chords that an important part of the sound of the chord is a tritone interval. So for the A half diminished, it's the flat 5. For the D7 altered, we have the 3rd and the 7th in here, and for the G minor 6, we have the 3rd and the major 6. So I'm using minor 6 pentatonic scales. And for the A half diminished, I'm using a C minor 6 pentatonic scale. So that's a C minor pentatonic scale where I've taken the flat 7, so the B flat, and then just replaced that with an A, and that's this scale. And for the D7 altered, here I'm using an E flat minor 6 pentatonic scale. So that's an E flat minor 7 where I've replaced the D flat with a C. So that's this scale. And for the G minor 6, I'm just using a G minor 6 pentatonic scale. So for the minor 251, we have that for the 2 chord, we're using a minor 6 pentatonic from the 3rd of the chord. So for A half diminished, that's a C minor 6 pentatonic. For the altered dominant, D7 altered in this case, I'm using a minor 6 pentatonic from the flat 9. So in this case, that's an E flat. So we have this pentatonic scale, and then for the tonic, I'm just using the minor 6 from the tonic of the chord. So in this case, that's a G minor 6 pentatonic scale. Usually when we're improvising over chord changes, then we have a scale that fits the chord, and we have some sort of arpeggio that's closely related to the chord, and then we combine the two with maybe some chromatic passing notes, and then we make a melody like that. But when you're working with pentatonic scales, you don't have the complete arpeggio. You can see that we don't actually have sort of the arpeggio of the chord in the scale most of the time. When you're improvising with pentatonic scales, you're then relying a lot more on having some patterns that you can use to create the melodies. And that's what I'm going to go over now. So I'm going to take a C minor pentatonic scale and then just go over a few useful patterns that are really easy to check out and get into your playing. I'm using the fact that when I'm playing pentatonic scales right now, there are 2 notes per string, because that's just a very sort of practical way to approach it when you're playing guitar. And we can sort of think of it that each string will have like a 1st and a 2nd note, and then use that as a way of thinking in string sets and patterns within that, and make it an easy way to move them through the scale. So the first pattern is this pattern, and I'm pretty sure that if you listen to a few Mike Stern solos, then there's a 50-50 chance he'll play this pattern. So the easy way to think of this is really just as string sets. So I'm playing first the 2nd note on a lower string, and then moving up to the next string, I'm playing the 2nd note there, and then going the other way with the 1st note. So first ascending, descending, and then just moving that down in string sets. So I'm using this in the first line in the solo on the C minor 7. So I'm starting on the F, and then down from the G here, and then again up from the C, and then adding the E flat, and then I go into the F7 altered line. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their support, and I don't think it would be possible for me to publish all these very specific jazz guitar and music theory videos without their help. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. If you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. The next pattern is really just playing the ascending minor pentatonic scale, but then on some strings I'm reversing the order of the notes. So if I play it through the C minor pentatonic scale, I'm starting by reversing the order, so I'm starting on E flat, going down to C. Then the next string is going to be played ascending, so first this note, the F, and up the G, then reverse again. And this I'm using a few times in the solo. You have it on the E flat major 7, where I'm playing as a part of that, and then I continue just up the scale. And I'm also using it on the D7 altered, where I'm using E flat minor 6 pentatonic. One way to understand the 3rd pattern here is to think about having a 1 and a 2 for each string, and then the way I'm going through the scale, I'm playing a descending pattern here, is that I'm playing the 1st note, so a 1, and then a 2nd note and a 2nd note, and then I'm just taking that down to the scale. So for the next set, I'm going to start on the next string, so 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. So we have, and you can hear, since the pentatonic scale is sort of a consonant sound in itself, then making these kind of systematic melodies are really giving us some great melodies that we can use. And this one I'm using on the A half diminished chord. So that's the first thing I'm playing on it. It's really just 1, 2, 2, and then another 1. And then from there I go into something else. The way you can work on this is, of course, you can check out some of the patterns that I went over here. But you can also easily see how you can start making your own patterns and just explore what's possible. I would say they're fairly easy to play, so if you just try and make something, play it through the scale, see if it sounds like something you can imagine becoming a jazz line. So if I take the last pattern here, so the 1, 2, 2, and then make a 2, 5, 1 line with that, that would be something like this. So what I'm doing is I'm first just playing that idea and using that twice, then the E flat and the F, and then I move into the next pattern on the F7 altered. So that's just the first pattern, and then just resolving that to an F on the B flat major 7. If you want to check out some more ideas on how you can use pentatonic scales in a jazz context, then check out this video where I'm going over 9 different ways to use some pentatonic scales on a 12-bar blues. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and this is the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.